So as far as progress is concerned on Build Back Better, it's dead. Forget about it. It's been shelved completely, thanks to Joe Manchin, primarily Joe Manchin, as well as Kyrsten Sinema, because those two are all about their own bottom line. They're all about getting their share of corporate profits. Joe Manchin, because he's personally invested in coal and other forms of dirty energy. His daughter was part of the company Mylon that was making the EpiPen, so she was deliberately caught red-handed, by the way, looking for ways to increase the price of the drug to make more profits for the company and, of course, herself. And I'm actually a little fuzzy on what Manchin's wife is, something about the West Virginia school system, but she apparently had her hands deep into the cookie jar like they were. So the Manchin crime family has been a thorn in the side of progress to West Virginia and to the well-being of West Virginians for decades. The unfortunate thing is nobody hears any different over there, so he's not going to be phased unless somehow somebody can go into West Virginia and convince those constituents that he's their enemy. They keep voting for him, but he's their enemy. He just uses his position of power to enrich himself. That's all he does. And Kyrsten Sinema, what's crazy about her, she was originally a member of the Green Party. Okay? Kyrsten Sinema, a member of the Green Party, the way she's acting today, you would never know it. You know, what she's most noted for, of course, is going like, raising the minimum wage, doing that in front of everybody, and shows that, hey, Arizonans are getting sick of her, and I don't blame them. I don't blame them at all. But those two have effectively killed Biden's agenda and almost assured Republicans, regaining the House in 2022, at the very least the House. Probably the Senate as well. But it may as well be having control of the Senate anyway, because Manchin and Sinema are acting like Republicans. That's something Bernie Sanders said on, I believe it was MSNBC, it could have been CNN. I'll find it and post the link below here. But he's right in that Joe Manchin is essentially acting like a Republican because, you know why? He is a Republican. In practice, he's a Republican. And if he is as socially liberal as he claims to be, I don't think he is. I think he's more of a conservative. But he claims to be, he says, I'm a West Virginia Democrat. So in other words, you're a Republican. Just own up to it, buddy. You're a Republican. You don't belong in the party. I really do believe that the Democratic Party leadership and others in the party need to move to expel him from their ranks. Cut him off. Don't give him any more DNC funding. Don't use media contacts to give him any more airtime. Just get rid of him. Get rid of him. Let him join the Republicans. Let him go on Fox News. Let him go on Newsmax or One American News Network. He'll find a home there, I'm sure. Same thing with Kyrsten Sinema. It's because of these two people that Build Back Better is dead. Not that it was all that great at the end of the day anyway. I mean, the initial one was $10 trillion. That's, yeah, New Deal style, baby. That's what we needed. Then they worked it down to $6 trillion. Everybody was still like, yeah. I'm like, whoa. Once you start whittling it down, if you're willing to give up one thing, you're willing to give up two things. Oh, you're willing to give up two things? Surely you're willing to give up 10 things? That seems to be the trick they play here. And the problem here is that progressives, chief among them Pramila Jayapal, very disappointing, is that she is just playing the game now. She's developed swamp brain. Look, in her heart, she may be a progressive, but in her actions and the way she's doing everything, the way she's calculating, she's effectively become a status quo manager. And I think it's time for the people in Washington to let her know that. In Washington State, that is, not D.C., but her constituency in D.C. And, where is she now? I think she's around Seattle somewhere. Like, what is it called? King County or something? Yeah. But anyway, she needs to be put on notice that her actions in supporting the status quo and what the corporate Democrats want won't be tolerated. But the other progressives, for the most part, did vote against the infrastructure bill, as they should have, saying that, they knew that if they voted for it, they would have given up their leverage. So they didn't do it. But enough of the Democrats did vote for it. They gave up the leverage. And now Build Back Better is dead. And we said that was going to happen. We knew that was going to happen. And now Americans are going to get screwed because that infrastructure bill handed a big portion of our infrastructure off to private interests. So one of two things are going to happen here. Either we're going to see more toll roads, more paying tolls where things were free before, or when things are developed, we're going to start seeing our local and state taxes go up to compensate for those tolls. So we're getting screwed either way. And then when that happens, you're going to see people like, okay, we need higher wages to compensate for that now. Businesses are like, oh yeah, well, we need to pay these tolls too. And we're going to be fighting amongst ourselves, as is usual, because rich people are rigging the system. And this is a big part of how they rig the system, so that they can sneak out the back door with all the money while we, fight ourselves tooth and nail. And they're like, ha ha ha, they're not looking at the real problem. We get all the money. So learn from that, guys. Let's learn from this. This is part of how they rig the system and how they use us to do it. But Joe Manchin and Kyrsten Sinema need to be kicked out of the party. They really do. They are not Democrats at all. I mean, I'm not a Democrat. I'm a member of the Green Party. I also run with the People's Party, but they are not representatives of the people. They never have been. They never will be. They're all about the Benjamins. They're all about the money. And they are a prime example of everything that's wrong with Washington, D.C. What's wrong with the revolving door? What's wrong with the culture in Washington? It's basically just an extension of Wall Street, an extension of corporate America, an extension of corporate greed. Most of the representatives in Congress represent industry because they come from industry. They bring their business acumen, their profit motive, into Washington. And that's part of the plan all along. Because business people going into Washington, getting that power, will rig the system so they can make more profit. Unlike the days of, when McKinley was assassinated, after they had been doing this to them with McKinley at the helm for, what was it, like 5 years at that point, I think it was? Shortly after he won his second election. But they thought they could get rid of their worst enemy, Teddy Roosevelt at the time, by burying him in the vice presidency. But of course, what they didn't take into account was that if you assassinate the president, or he dies of an illness, or whatever the case, if he resigns, then the vice president takes over. And when that happened, he was their worst nightmare. He was the trust buster. So they learned their lesson from that, and now they just infiltrated every level of government imaginable, and every way we could possibly use to get our system back and make lives better for ourselves has been thoroughly captured. We can't do it. We need a new system. But we really need to send a message to these corporate Democrats. Like Joe Manchin and Kyrsten Sinema, they need to be made a public example of. It needs to be known. You cannot come into the party that's supposed to be representing the people and do this to them. They need to be kicked out of the party. They need to be ostracized from polite society. They need to be exposed. They need to be constantly smeared as the corrupt corporate goons that they are. And Joe Manchin particularly, because his daughter was the COO of Mylan, which makes the EpiPen, and she was caught red-handed trying to raise prices on the product, finding ways to do it so that they could make more profit at the expense of the patients that need them. That's why it ended up costing, like, what was it? 300%, 3,000%, I don't know, some ridiculous number that should not even have been allowed in the first place. So the whole Manchin family needs to be prosecuted and sent to prison. In a world that made sense, that's exactly what would happen. And I did that one about the Danish ex-immigration minister, right? She's suffering consequences for what she did. But in this country, people like Manchin, they do what they do, and it's called Tuesday. They can get away with it scot-free. We have a lot of work to do as a country. We need a whole new system. We need one where corruption is ranked among the highest echelons of, Class A felonies, where there's the most severe consequences for it. We cannot, and we need a separate investigative body when it comes to these things. We cannot allow Congress to investigate itself. That is the worst possible thing you could do. You want to hold powerful people accountable, you can't leave the investigating up to them and their own devices. That is the dumbest possible thing you could do. So, thank Joe Manchin and Kyrsten Sinema for killing whatever was left of Build Back Better that may have been good. So now we're going to get nothing. Corporations get everything. It's business as usual. It's time to change the system and make an example of these goons.